So glad to have so many of you joining us on this first Monday in June. Welcome to summer, everyone. My name is Joe Swimmer. I am the Executive Director of Episcopal Parish Network, and we are very pleased to have you joining us today for this session on communications best practices with our Polybond Award winners with Episcopal Communicators. It's a terrific group that has been assembled by Episcopal Communicators, our partner in this particular digital workshop. Know that you're going to learn a lot, and very excited to have them here, as well as Alan, President of Episcopal Communicators, who will be moderating the session. We welcome you to learn more about Episcopal Parishes Network by going to our website, which is in the text that I posted in the chat. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send a message to us at info@episcopalparishes.org. And also, please mark the dates for our annual conference coming up February 25th through 28th next year in Kansas City, where we will have a lot of good learning, a lot of great networking, and barbecue that you can't get away from because it is Kansas City. That's a lot from me, but thank you so much again for joining us. And now over to Alan and the Polybond Award winners. Thank you all so much. Have a great session.
Thanks so much, Joe. It's great to be here with the panelists. Great to be here with you all tuning in. I'm Alan Yarborough. I'm the Church Relations Officer for the Office of Government Relations and Chair of the Board of Episcopal Communicators. It is going to be hopefully a lot of fun to chair this panel or moderate this panel today. Just brief introductions of these panelists. Ali Gannett's the Communications Director of the World Forestry Center, but was formerly the Director of Communications for the Episcopal Church in Oregon. Sinclair Sparkman, they're the Missioner for Communications in the Episcopal Diocese of Western North Carolina. It's the diocese where I grew up, so great to have you on. Denise Fillion is Director of Communications for the Episcopal Diocese of Long Island, and Mary Grace Pushka is the Communications Manager for Episcopal Ministries of Long Island. So again, wonderful to have the four of you here. Just very quickly, Episcopal Communicators is a self-supporting, volunteer-led organization of communications professionals who work across the Episcopal Church. They're freelancers, people with parishes, dioceses, organizations, and our mission is to foster community that inspires and supports excellence in church communications. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, which is quite exciting for us, and we're grateful for the continued partnership with the Episcopal Parish Network, both in this webinar and other programming we've done together, including the pre-conference at the EPN annual gathering earlier this year. For more information and to join Episcopal Communicators, if you are not already, you can see the link that I've placed in the chat. And then as some background, just very briefly as well, on the awards that we've talked about, Polybond, that is a person's name. She was one of the people who was integral in the founding of Episcopal Communicators. And then each year we have our annual Polybond Excellence in Church Communications Awards that are open to members of Episcopal Communicators. Members can submit entries in over 14 categories that represent different communications platforms and skills to be judged and recognized by industry experts who are outside of the church in each communications category. It's a really cool professional development program that we have. And just a good chance to highlight some of the awesome work that communicators do across the church. I've shared the link as well in the chat to the 2024 winners, but we have previous winners listed and linked to there as well. So enough from me. I want to start with our first question, and I'll leave this to you all to answer in order, but would love to hear from each of you. So we talk about the Polybond Awards, their excellence in church communications. What are a couple of characteristics that make up excellent church communications?
Well, I'll go. Sorry. I think that some of the most important things that we have to remember is that we are here to share good news. And it's kind of like we do in church on Sundays from the pulpit. We are sort of perpetuating that out through what we share with people. And one thing I know for me, from my experience, is to update things often. And that is one thing, just keeping your focus on making sure that everything is updated throughout all of the seasons. It's an important thing. And my last one was just to encourage interaction, whether that's online or offline. And I think that we're here to build relationships. So that was what my thoughts.
I'll just piggyback a little bit on what Sinclair said so well. I think foundationally, the places where I see excellent church communication, at the core, there's a real buy-in to understanding communication as a ministry of the church, that it's a real, that it's, that it's something serious, that there are skills involved, and that it's something to think intentionally and strategically about, because it all is in support of developing that relationship and that connection with other people. And it's so key to feel like it's worth your investment of time and energy so that you can do that well and effectively. I had a couple other thoughts when Alan said these questions. I thought also accessibility of information. So making sure that all your key information is where your audiences can easily find it wherever they are. But especially, and I know Sinclair and Allie are going to be able to speak to this very well later on, but on your website, some like those kind of foundational pieces are in place. And then the other thing I thought of was about, developing or having an authentic voice and finding opportunities for personal connection in your communication, whether that's on a blog. Sort of, I'm thinking kind of outside of the nuts and bolts of communicating the basic things that everybody needs to know, but finding those, whether it's like a podcast or a blog or fun videos on social media, like finding those little opportunities to, I think, be a little fun or have a real personal connection with your audience.
I would agree. My key is always to be authentic, and that shows itself in being able to be true to the gospel, but also in a way that represents your diocese or your church. Not trying to pretend that if you're a church, not trying to pretend that you have a bunch of 20-something-year-olds and they get all of the same sort of feeling or anything, but really embracing the community of Christ that you're with, and tailoring your audience and their messaging to your audience. The other would definitely be accessibility. And, that's coming from a communicator side, is making sure that it's posted everywhere so that you can say that you've done what you could do by sharing the information in multiple different places and in multiple different formats. And then the last one would be something that is action forward, sort of what Sinclair was saying, like something that draws people to do more than just read or gather once, but to either think about the gospel or think about this world a little differently, or to come to an event if you're trying to promote it, or follow through. So those would be my 3 A's: authenticity, accessibility, and actionable.
I love that, Allie. I'll say specifically for a social media lens, because that's really my area of expertise, along with a couple of other things, as communicators are often asked to do really everything. But I'll say social media and communications writ large is the first touch point that folks are going to get for your church, usually. So kind of one of the biggest things that I'll often say in environments like this is that somebody like me, somebody especially younger than me even, really we're checking social media and websites maybe even before we attend a church for the first time if we're looking for a new community. So indicating to me right away on socials, on your website, that somebody is updating this regularly, that there are things to do at your church, there are people coming to your church, there are people that care about the community there. I think that's one of the first kind of points of seeing communications as really as evangelism, is that I love what Sinclair said initially, that we have good news to share. I didn't grow up in the Episcopal Church. I grew up in a church that was not inclusive towards women and LGBTQ people. And I really needed to hear the message of the Episcopal Church in my youth. And I feel really blessed to be in this position where I get to now share good news as my job. And I think if we, the nitty gritty details of communications can sometimes, be tedious, but I think focusing on that big picture of this is a wonderful church with a wonderful message of Jesus's love at its core, and to really integrate that message into all of the public communications and really combat a lot of the different styles of Christianity that we see in our country, particularly in this election season. I would say it's really important for us to be strong communicators and to showcase that there is a way, and there are people in your community that you can come to and visit and connect with that have a vision of Christianity that cares for our neighbors and the earth.
Nice. Thank you all for reflecting on that question. Allie, I'm partial to the letter A as well, so that was a good choice. And hearing some themes here, it's not just creativity, but I think that's a piece of it. It's also being clear. And I appreciated the authenticity word as well. It's communications requires a lot of different considerations. And again, we're speaking with some award winners here, so I want to go from that broad question down to the specifics of the entries that you all won for. So I'll start with Sinclair and Allie. The two of you won Polybond Awards for Best Website, I believe. Different websites, but that was the category that you all entered. I'd love for each of you to talk through your website, what it's about, and why you made some of the decisions you did around it. And either of you can go first. Sinclair, I see you're unmuted, so I might go toward you.
I usually stay unmuted so that I don't have to worry about unmuting.
That's a good.
I can go. One of the things with our website, dioceswnc.org for Western North Carolina, is that we have so much on there, and it's finding a way to make that, I'll use the word accessible and easy to navigate. So one of the things, I really have to give our Canon to the Ordinary a lot of credit, Augusta Anderson, because she did a lot of the sort of planning and implementation behind the idea of the website, which is to be highly visually engaging, for one thing, and to also tell our story and to do what it's really there to do, which is provide resources. So one of the things that we did since I got here was adding a resource button to the very front page and the top menu bar so that people can easily find the things that they're probably looking for. So that was one of the big things, is just to make it visually engaging. And we do that by having a nice big background picture on every page. But if you do something like that, you have to make it readable as well. So you can't just have text on picture. But there's a lot to be said for something that's pretty. People like pretty. So just kind of marrying those things. And one of the things the judges said was to make it more mobile friendly, which is just always a good tip, because a lot of our traffic does come from desktop users, but if it's going to be clicked on by people who might just be curious and doing a Google search, it's probably on the phone. So it's always good to pay attention to that.
Thanks, Sinclair. Allie.
Yeah. So our website, when I was working on it last year, it was in tandem of a full rebranding of the diocese. And so we saw that as an opportunity to change up the colors and look and feel. And one thing that we were really moving towards was a new name. And so reflected in that, going from Diocese of Oregon to the Episcopal Church in Western Oregon, was changing up the URL, which would prove to be quite the journey to get a 4-letter URL. I do not recommend that process to anyone. It's both can be expensive, and also while the the pros are that it's very simple to get to, and it simplifies. Yeah, it's not easy to claim those smaller URLs. But we decided we had worked on WordPress, which was the platform, and we decided to move forward with WordPress. And for those who are WordPress geeks, we use the Divi platform, DIVI, from Elegant Themes. And we worked with a designer who helped us build that out. And starting with the process of going from looking at a sitemap and figuring out what were the key things that we wanted in the new website. And for me, it was I needed to have a bar on the homepage so that whenever we did send out something and said, you can learn more on our website, whatever we're saying to that, if it's an event, it's on the homepage so that it's not a scavenger hunt for people to find out when an event was. And then the second one was to be able to get to a page within one click, two if you had to. And so that was exploring different ways to utilize the menu option. And I really wanted, I think I relied on the Diocese of Western Tennessee, or I think they had a great menu that you could see everything, all of the subpages. And that was something I wanted to recreate, was that we had headers, subheaders, and then just one page. And then through that page, you used scrolling. And my kind of rule is always to use, like, if you can't fit everything in 3 scrolls, being like 1, 2, 3, then it's too much information. So really trying to limit that, utilizing drop-down menus, and various kind of plugins that allowed it to be more, I think, friendly to visitors. And then the next one, the final one, was just to be and think like why someone is going to our website, both from a visitor who might not know the diocese, so they might be looking at where a church is located, so having the asset map on the homepage. They might be, if they are one of our clergy people, they might be trying to find the form for something or the clergy manual. And so rather than keeping track of ongoing PDFs and all of that, I just tried to really integrate it into the website, so that we can also make these documents as living documents and not getting too creative with the name of things. Like if you're looking for a form, it's a lot easier if you know the name of the form and that's what you click, rather than coming up with a brand new fancy title for it. And so that all was wrapped up in trying to also create a very modern, clean, clear website with that also reflected the Pacific Northwest. So the color schemes being a lot of greens and kind of moodier tones fits the authenticity of the diocese. And also just incorporating video and movement, I think allows for a nice experience on the website.
Moody tones, I like that. Mary Grace and Denise, let's switch to the other topic, social media. So again, you both won in that category. I would love for y'all to talk through the social media pieces, and some of the decisions you made behind them.
Sure. So back in, I don't know, October or November, our bishop came to me and said he wanted to do an Advent ad campaign because he was hearing from people, I don't know, all over the place that we were, the Episcopal Church is the best kept secret in Long Island and New York. Like people were telling him, I've never, I just happened to discover you somehow, or they're coming from other mainline churches, which I won't name, but that didn't realize how similar we were, but also held their their values a little more closely. So he came to us. He wanted to make sure people knew about us, and he originally was envisioning a newspaper ad, but Long Island and New York you'd have to put ads in, I don't know how many dozens and dozens of newspapers to actually cover the geography. And also the way he was talking, I think he really wanted to reach people that were a little bit younger than might be the typical demographic subscribing to newspapers still. So, so we met as a team actually. So Mary Grace is the communication manager for Episcopal Ministries of Long Island, and she also works on my team on the diocese. So she and I and my colleague Teddy, we all met and kind of just had a meeting about like what could be this overall concept. Like we want to highlight who we are as a church for people who are maybe unfamiliar with the Episcopal Church and maybe also just unchurched in general, but looking for a spiritual home and what makes the Episcopal Church sort of, I think, unique and special, and how can we get that across to people. I think so. I guess we could show the video in a moment. And Mary Grace, I'm sure Mary Grace came up with a lot of the concept for the video. So I'd love to hear her jump in on this. But I think one key decision that we talked about quite a bit that I still stand behind, but I think you could argue it another way, is that we actually didn't mention Episcopal in this reel that we created for Instagram and Facebook, and that was intentional because I thought we wanted to kind of get who we are across without necessarily saying Episcopal, and just get people a little bit intrigued and actually go to our website to find out more and maybe find a church near them. So yeah, Mary Grace, what would you like to add?
Sure. Well, first off, I think it's like a 15-second video, so maybe we can just share that and right off.
Do you want me to do that? Here, MG, I'll do it.
Sounds challenging
right.
today.
Okay.
That'd be great.
All right, 1 second.
And while you're doing that, Denise, I'll just say that we decided to go after we talked the bishop away from running a couple $1,000s of ads in newspapers to attract young people who maybe don't read newspapers anymore, at least the physical printouts of them. We decided to go with a video mostly because, I mean, in general, if you're not using video in social media right now, please reconsider. And I'll just say that typically when we look at our data, Instagram Reels and Facebook Reels now are typically reaching an audience that's about 75% non-followers, 25% followers, and then the opposite is true for still posts. So those, just graphics or posts that are not moving, your typical even photo-based posts are reaching 75% followers and only 25% non-followers. So when we're thinking of communications for reaching new people, new eyes that have not seen your content, highly recommend video posts, even if it's photos made into a video post. In terms of just the algorithm right now is really favoring typically short videos. So that was a mindset I went into in coming up with this video in the first place. So maybe Denise, you have it ready now?
I do. One here. Okay. Are you seeing it? Yeah. Oh, one second. Yeah. And let me oh my goodness. Sorry. I know it's, oh my goodness. Oh, there we go.
Nicely done.
Yeah.
It was cool to see that video again. And it's short, you're right. It's just, 15 seconds. But it gets a very clear message across, at least I think. Anything else you want to share on that particular piece?
Yeah, I would say this isn't directly related to this video in particular, but I would say in general, You know, I try to think of our social media content different buckets. So what are the things that I'm most frequently sharing? So I help manage the diocesan account and also Episcopal Mysteries accounts. Social media will take up as much time as you're allowed to take up. So I'm a big advocate for segmenting your time that you work on that and kind of doing as much as you can in an hour time block, maybe 90-minute time block, and not letting it seep into the rest of your week. Maybe there's some folks that are not scheduling content yet, which I highly recommend as well. Meta Business Suite is a free tool that integrates Instagram and Facebook for free. You can schedule things up to 30 days in advance on that platform for free. Highly recommend doing that if you're not already, just to save yourself the hassle of constantly posting in the moment. But typically in terms of those buckets, you know, a lot of parishes have events that they have to share news about, or, you know, maybe there's a recap of an event that you have to share about. And there's these kind of like have to share content. I'd also encourage you to think about the content that's fun to share, right? So at the end of the day, people are typically on social media to be entertained. Maybe they're there to learn, but typically they're there to be entertained. So if you're not integrating content that is either educational or resourceful or fun, your social media accounts will only reach the audience that is already listening to what your church has to say. So that again, like, is kind of that reel, hopefully is, you know, it's enjoyable to watch. It piques your interest and curiosity. Hopefully, you know, you visit the profile, see that we're posting regularly, visit the website. We posted that for Advent to encourage, obviously, folks to check out our churches during Christmas time. We also posted it during Lent for Easter. And we will very likely reshare that or tweak and adapt and reshare a concept of that reel for, you know, years to come.
Awesome. Very cool.
We're
Go ahead,
getting a
Pete.
few questions, so I just wanted to make sure we address those. We got
Meta Business
question.
app.
Yeah, you were mentioning Meta Business Suite. I mean, there's a lot of other ones also potentially, but Meta Business Suite's a very easy one to use. And then the reel was distributed just on Facebook and Instagram. We actually, on our diocese, we're not using TikTok right now for a couple reasons, but you know, who knows, maybe. But and then Mary Grace, so Nancy Purcell asked, how did we measure the effectiveness of our video ad? Well, we did have some complications because we did intend to, I don't know, Mary Grace, do you want to talk about that at all? Or?
Yeah, our account, I've managed probably about like 10 to 12 different social media accounts thus far in my career. All of them were at the intersection of faith and politics. So you always run into the issue of like political / religious advertising restrictions that typically I find tighten around election years for sure. 6 or 7 years ago, you could definitely get away with ads that you can't get away with anymore. So within about maybe 3 hours of posting that, our account was banned from promoting. And you can kind of, it's not really that political, but political enough to get our account blocked. So there was a bunch of back and forth, not blocked totally, but blocked from promoting. So the ad just couldn't promote, and there was a back and forth with Meta that if I back and forth with Meta customer service takes up to 6 months to get problems resolved. So I to actually email Meta. If people ever need that, I do like have the page where you can like actually email a human being from Meta. But basically what should happen is maybe I can also find like a help article on this as well, but there is a way to embed a widget in your website. So if the idea is that you're trying to track traffic from a social media platform to website, like the conversion rate between people seeing that reel and people clicking on a link and going to your website, there is a widget that you can embed in your website to track those conversions, depending on whether you're using WordPress or Drupal or things along those lines. But I can maybe find, it's obviously a little bit technical and there's some coding involved that you'd probably have to send to whoever it is managing your website, unless that's you. But there is a way to track those conversions. We were not able to do it because of our kind of situation with Meta. And of course, you know, we're posting it the second week of Advent. We don't have 6 months to communicate with Meta, before Christmas time. It was definitely a bit of a bummer, but hey, you know, Christmas happens every year, fortunately. So we can, we can try
and We actually reused it leading up into Holy Week also, because we intentionally made it sort of evergreen so that we could do that.
And I'll
Yeah.
just say there's a question here that who designed the video. I designed that video directly in Canva, and then actually we exported it for some minor tweaks in what does Teddy use?
In Adobe Premiere Pro. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he did some tweaking and sound editing in Premiere Pro, but
Actually,
that's
that in Canva though, in terms of like sound, all of the edits and kind of transitions you saw are all possible in Canva, which is free for nonprofits, including churches. So could also share that link. Really should get paid by Canva for how much I promote Canva, but yeah.
You're like all the time, Mary Grace, promoting Canva, and you're an expert at using it. Yeah, it's really good. Well, I want to thank y'all for sharing about the post, and there are numbers, just so many tips and details, from the thought behind what goes into a post, the rhyme and reason behind a lot of the decisions, to some of the technical pieces. So I want to shift back to, it's a little odd, we're covering websites and social media as kind of two somewhat separate topics, but switching back to the website piece, Sinclair and Allie, I want to introduce my next question, which is to talk through three components of your website. And I'm actually going to put them in the chat so that others can see as well. Use for communicating to those who are already in your church, use as a public face for the church, or evangelism, if you will, and then any technical recommendations for websites. So it's a little bit of a catch-all question, but would love to hear from you all about those three particular elements and considerations for your work. I picked on Sinclair last time, so Allie, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I would say that to answer the first one, use for communicating to those already in the church, realizing that our website, the purpose of for me, it was the diocesan website, is to find information and other resources, and less about capturing the sense of the diocese as a whole. I think that goes more towards the public face evangelism. So for those already in the church, we wanted to make sure that you could easily find news and events. You could easily find forms if you're a clergy person. You could easily find HR information. And you could also find, especially, all information regarding our annual meeting or convention. So that was, coming down to just naming it news and events, and being able to walk through also about staff, just getting it really clear and concise about having the names and emails right there for people to contact staff members. With regards to the public face or evangelism, that is, I think, more geared towards the overall sense and one's feeling. So we did integrate some of the language around thriving communities and lifelong learning, and being able to, when you open that, you have a clear definition of what we mean by those, so that it's not, there's a layer of insider language, but it's immediately explained to you once you hover over it. So you go to thriving communities. Okay, so you're talking about churches, camp, youth, what we call working groups, that, and then you can easily go to those. The other was within the working groups, if you were to go to learn about the creation care working group, you can also see if they're having any events. So it's all kind of linked, and that we utilized within Divi, and Calendar Pro, I think is what it's called, is another plugin that Events Calendar Pro is one that we've used. Those are really easy to put into a WordPress, and so having that all linked so that all of the youth events are on the youth page as well as on the calendar page, and it's all populated through tagging the event or using categories, so that whoever's updating the event doesn't, or the website doesn't have to go in and manually type it in every time. So that would be, you know, showing that there's events happening. Constantly changing the banner at the top of the homepage was important. So as an event came up and the marketing was already created for it, putting it on there, having it, even if it's a save the date, but really having that action item to show that things are happening. And then technical recommendations. If you have the capacity to work with someone who does website design, even if it's just for consulting or getting their opinion, I would suggest that if you have the budget, there's freelancers that are out there on Upwork and other kind of websites. It's kind of helpful because while we all are superhumans, our bandwidth gets cut at a certain time. And so, especially taking on a project like redoing a whole website or something like that, having another partner in it was really helpful. In my process, we met every single Monday for, I think, you know, a couple months, and just really, you know, even if we were just silently working on our own, I was working on content, she was working on the coding aspect of it. It was really helpful to have that partner, and not just think that it was all on me to create a website, because I don't know coding. I know a little bit of it, but not enough to do what they did.
Yeah, I think that's important, Allie. You know, with websites in particular, there's like an upfront cost or an upfront knowledge at getting a new site set up or revamping your website as it is. And, you know, getting outside help to the extent the budget can allow it can really be critical for that. But it doesn't have to be something that's ongoing, you know, for all of eternity, right? You can start to take over the updates and refreshing it and keeping things current once that sort of framework is built and in place.
And utilizing program like we used Divi, which I said, and there's other ones that are like that. That's the back end program. And I am like their number one fan for support help. You know, I was able to use them if they needed to code something or just explain, you know, we want the website to be able to do this. How can we do that? So really using the support platforms for wherever your website is hosted, or if you're using a WordPress, wherever your theme is hosted, that's what you pay for every month. So use it, and it's their job to help you with it. So as long as you're nice to them, they usually help you.
All right. Thanks, Allie, for walking through that. Sinclair.
Yeah, I think that that's a great tip, because it's okay to not know everything about doing a website. And a lot of people face this big thing without a whole lot of knowledge. And so they're there to help you for sure. And so great point. And so for me, the using it to communicate with those in church is sort of the same thing as Allie. Um, you know, people are there for diocesan websites to find their forms, to find when the bishop is going to come to their church and do things like that that are technical. And so there's a challenge there of making it look really nice for visitors, and also making it easy to navigate for people who need the sort of nuts and bolts things. But I think I was thinking about my behavior as a parishioner going to a church website, and a lot of the times I'm looking for the give button, or I'm looking for like what's coming up on the Sunday forum. And so thinking about your own behavior is helpful when you approach how to set things up. And so um, yeah, having things that are really easy to find and easy to navigate is important. And one of the things on our website that we have is a welcome video from both the bishop and the presiding bishop, and it helps, I think, people be engaged to be able to watch something like that, and things that kind of pique curiosity too, if you want to have better time on site and have people, you know, scrolling through. We have a a story section. We tell the story of the diocese, and it's there. I mean, it's important. People want to know those things, and not everybody who comes to the website wants to know those things, but that means the information is there. And that's a part of the public face that is important. And also having some of the terminology explained, like what does it even mean to be an Episcopalian? Having some of that available as well. And then churches can link to it, or they can see that and make their own. But that's an important thing. In all honesty, I was not an Episcopalian before a few years ago, and it's intimidating to go into a place where there's a lot of new language and things like that. So having some of those things to just make people feel more welcome, and explaining some of the things that create barriers sometimes for people, I think is helpful. So yeah, having really easy to navigate things is important. And you can't say that enough when it comes to a website. Like the scrolling thing, that was a really great tip. 3 scrolls, 1 click, 3 scrolls. So
Yeah. We created I mean, I think this is new because the belief page on a diocese, and what was really helpful, and I can share it. And I found myself when I was after the website was created, and I was still with the diocese, finding there we had links to the Spanish and the French version of the Book of Common Prayer, and that was I found myself using that page as a resource a lot, um, just to be able to have and it was a great practice to just how can you clarify what we believe and what we believe about the things we believe um, in a shorter space, and that was a really good practice. I highly recommend, helping you create that elevator pitch of what you do as a diocese or a church or as a Christian, is really helpful to ground your communication plan.
and when I thought of
Nice.
something else, I was going to mention just putting your access in a place, like your passwords and things that people might need if they are new to your team. Um, just putting all of that in a place where it's easy to remember. So having a document or somebody who can bridge that gap between people who, if you have turnover or something like that, it's always important to know how to get into things. And that goes for social media too. So that's just something to think about.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sinclair. And that, for folks tuning in from small parishes or large parishes, like whatever your context is, like making sure there's not a single point of failure in terms of back-end access for websites and
Oh,
social media is super critical. It can be really difficult sometimes to recover that access if needed. So it is, partly about sharing the load, or if someone hopefully takes vacation time, and there is someone else who can fill in for that duration, but it's also about job transition and people moving, like things that happen naturally, making sure there are a number of people who have that access, who are trusted, keeping record of who has that access so
mhm.
that if someone does leave, you can then revoke it if needed, or update a password if needed. But yeah, Sinclair, that's a great point. I've seen a number of places get tripped up with that.
Yeah,
Yep. I also
yeah,
appreciate it, Sinclair. You're talking about like vocabulary. A couple of you did, but vocabulary and language. I mean, I think in the Office of Government Relations role, at least, I feel like most of my job is translating between the government and the church, and so making sure we're aware of, we can't just use insider language and then hope that others will be attracted to it, because they're not going to know what it means. They'll sense that insider outsider dynamic. So I think really reflecting thoughtfully about what we mean and what we're talking about, is a key part of this. Um, Mary Grace and Denise, I want to switch to you all for social media and these same sort of 3 criteria. I'll
yeah.
muted
So,
myself. Yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just going to piggyback on that very, very key tip about having, multiple access points or ensuring that there's multiple access. I think with social media, I've even talked to parishes where I think it's actually a safe church issue also, in addition to just like being good practice for transitions. So For parish pages, absolutely, there should be multiple people with access to the account that are reviewing like private message that can see all private messages or whatever as well. So that could be my technical tip for social media.
Well,
I was just gonna,
and thinking, go ahead.
Change your password when people leave as well. Sorry, that's the
Yeah.
last thing. Passwords if somebody on your team. Do not leave them as a Facebook administrator if they are
Right.
no longer active.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No, and Denise, thinking about the safe church and private messaging, I didn't even think of that, but even also from like knowing best practices for posting pictures and video and what the
Absolutely.
permissions are, particularly
Right.
with minors, but there are other considerations as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Whoever has
Yeah.
access
Yeah.
needs to
For
know
sure.
that. Yep.
For sure. Yep. They need to be trained. So, I mean, your questions were the use of social media for communicating to those already in the church. I mean, it's obviously, it's another tool to get information to your audience wherever they're at. And personally, I think your website is always the hub from which things go out, but it's just another opportunity to reach people where they'll see you. And then for a public face and evangelism, I mean, I think again, social media is just a great, I mean, it's a great opportunity, like Mary Grace was saying earlier, to reach people outside your core audience. And it's, I think, a space that's like perfectly suited for that more fun, like a different voice than you might be approaching, have in your, at least in the diocese, in a diocesan standpoint on the website, or a lot of like the statements that go out, or e-news even. It's just a place to have a little bit different voice. And I know, so Mary Grace has a million great technical recommendations for social media, but I'll just say that in general, and just to plug Episcopal Communicators as like a technical recommendation, I would recommend technically you should join Episcopal Communicators so that, because using your network of resources, I mean, anybody who's been a part of Episcopal Communicators listserv is just like, people are constantly going back and forth asking for recommendations for this or that. And it is such a big job, especially, I mean, on a lot of levels, that we're always needing help outside our own personal expertise. So I would just gonna plug it there.
I have a couple of different notes. I want to not forget to mention this beliefs page that Ali shared earlier. Not only is this awesome, like I love that you've articulated this, this is also really great for SEO purposes. So SEO is search engine optimization. And basically that's just the concept that when you search things on Google, or whatever it is, whatever search engine you're using, Google wants to give you local recommendations to answer your questions. So if your parish has a what we believe and, welcome to our church, this is what we do, this is how we pray, these are our mission, our values, our beliefs. Somebody in your area that's searching, what does it mean to be Christian? Are there inclusive Christian parishes near me? Things like that. Your website will rank higher if you have a statement of these beliefs and, basically answers to their questions on your website. So taking that sort of idea is that, I forgot to mention this earlier, but pretend to be the person interacting with your page, with your website. So the same thing kind of applies for social media. So in terms of technical recommendations, I've already mentioned a bit that video is going to access a non-follower audience, which is what you really want for the evangelism portion of this. But if you're thinking about how you use social media yourself, maybe you're scrolling through videos and you find a video you like. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't, maybe you check the comments. But ideally, if you like this style of content, you'd hopefully visit the profile of the person that created it. And sometimes what you'll find is that it was a one-off reel that went viral and that person's not actually creating content that you want to see on a regular basis, and you'll navigate away and not follow that person. With your social media, you want people to be like, oh, this is something, these are posts and interesting content that I'd like to follow. So basically the idea is that if you're scrolling, somebody finds a video, they find your search, how quickly after getting to your Facebook page or your Instagram page can people understand who you are? How many seconds is it going to take? Really, probably less than 10 for them to understand whether or not they want to associate, want to follow. or, want to visit your church, come to an event, whatever it is. So for that, my technical recommendation would be to use a highlight bubble. So actually, I don't want to share my screen again because I know we're kind of running low on time, but if you go to, I'll just pop the Instagram handle of Episcopal Ministries in the chat here. There's the little highlight bubble on the top of that Instagram page that says start here. I definitely have recommend having a welcome bubble if you're, in the parish context, that gives a sense right away of what people are going to find at your parish, and to say hello, welcome them, let them know that they be valued, and when your services are, all of that kind of critical information has to be super easy to find. On Facebook, you can do that by maybe you have a welcome video, pin it to the top of your page. So all of that critical information that's going to attract somebody new has to be easily accessible within the first 10 seconds, I would argue. Okay, just a couple of notes here. So a lot of people, I think I saw a question also of what's the cadence of posting. And I know a lot of people often say well, I don't have anything to share on social media. If you have a website and you have a bulletin or a weekly e-news, you have content to share on social media, duplicate it. Say the same things over and over again. Trust me, you just, say it 30 times, maybe people will hear it once and they're only half paying attention anyway. So say it multiple times across all your channels. That's also part of an accessibility issue, is repeat the information. It's okay. If you're sharing similar content regularly. So for example, I'd recommend if you're in the parish context, you have a sermon every week, use a quote from that sermon, put it in an Instagram graphic, share it on social media, link to your video recording of your sermon, or say, maybe you don't live stream anymore, whatever the case may be, say, join us next week. This is the preacher next week. You reuse the content that is already being created in your parish context. So especially, I do this in Canva, but you can have, templates in various places, but have a template for each style of content that you're using, so that you're frequently using. If you have an event, have the basic outline of what your event is going to look like in terms of the flyer. Maybe you change the background, but make it easy for yourself to share the kinds of recurring content that you have. Yeah, I have templates for featured stories. So sometimes we're featured in the news. I have a template to share that. Testimonials from our ministry volunteers. I'm in an organization that fundraises, so we have, kind of giving style templates. We have data style templates, but have templates that make your life easier when it comes to sharing social media content. And let me see if I'm missing anything. And in terms of the cadence, I would say more important than, a lot of people, especially influencers, will say you have to share a reel every single day if you want to see growth. Unrealistic to expect that from somebody who's managing so many different parts of a job. It's more important to be consistent than it is to share every day. So the real goal is to determine with yourself, in 1 hour after you, finish the bulletin or you finish the weekly e-news, can you take an hour to transfer that content and make it social media friendly? How many posts does that look like for you? And how long does it take you to schedule it? And if that's 2 posts, if that's 1 post, if it's 5 posts, schedule it all there. How much can you do really in an hour or 90 minutes or whatever it is that you reasonably can give to this? Because the cadence is not as important as the consistency over time. That's it. That's my note.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on time, so I just want to give Denise, do you have something else you want to add?
I just saw there was this question from Ron about budgets for website and social comms, and honestly, I see this question. I don't know that I have a great answer for it, but I would say I don't know that the percentage for a budget necessarily changes so much between organizations. I don't know what you'd think, but it's so tough. I don't think I don't know. Does anybody have any good answer for him? I feel like it's so dependent.
Yeah, I guess from my knowledge, I know that at least Wix for a yearly is around 300, I think. And that's a yearly cost to host on Wix and do things through Wix for a website. But other than that, it is whatever you can handle, because you could add costs for having someone design it and things like that too. So see if your diocese has grants. See if you can get grants and get help that way too.
Yep. Yeah, I think the budget piece is difficult. With different sizes of churches, different contexts, different ministries even. We've covered social media and websites today, but there are other considerations connected to this, including, live streaming capabilities, video production, if you're wanting to do that in-house. Or for smaller parishes, I've seen great examples of people who use volunteer networks within the church to produce content for social media, and everything in between. But it's my hope, with Episcopal Communicators and this program today, that the church just takes this part of church ministry more seriously, and continues to invest in it. And so if that investment can mean, financial backing, great. If there are limitations there, at least have this intentionality behind it, and it's going to make a positive difference. So Sinclair, Allie, Mary Grace, Denise, thank you all so much for your contributions today, for sharing your expertise on social media and websites. Joe and the Episcopal Parish Network, really grateful for you all as well, hosting us once again. I saw there was a question earlier in the chat about sort of borrowing some of this content. And I think, to that, I would say, there are these experts and several hundred others available to you all in Episcopal Communicators. And if you have not joined already, I'd encourage you to do so, or encourage your communications person or people to do so as well. It's a great chance to get exposure to other ideas like these. And I think there is a lot of, imitation and flattery that happens, and that is a great, efficient way to approach church communications. But we also talk about, legal and practical considerations for borrowing as well, and what it means to take into consideration, photography rights or music rights and that sort of thing. So there's just a wealth of information that Episcopal Communicators can offer. Again, at the risk of repeating myself, sort of my concluding remark here is for parishes that are a bit more resourced. I hope that you come away from this understanding that, a lot goes into communications, and it's important for you to invest in your communications personnel and their budget. And then for parishes with fewer resources, this can seem overwhelming perhaps, but I think, Rome was not built in a day. It is okay, and I know the folks on here have done this, to just chip away at improvements. It doesn't happen overnight, but eventually taking in, this new information, new improvements here or there, things that we can change on our websites, our social media, and other forms of communication. Even bulletin board inserts, that's one of the newer things from our office, is we have printable bulletin board flyers for our action alerts. That's not a full answer to that question, but in person, signage and all in your churches is important as well. So there's so much to be doing. Thank you for covering these two portions of communications with us. And we look forward to connecting with you down the road. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.